Hello students, this is Professor Jitendra Acharya. In the previous lecture, we have seen the basic architecture of PLC and what is meant by PLC. Now in this lecture, we are going to see the first component, that is input and output devices. So let's start with the input and output devices of PLC. Now what is meant by input and output device or units? Now input and output units are nothing but devices which provides the interface between the system and the outside world. Now what it mean? So it means that whatever the input we provide to the PLC or to the system, the processor receives it and uh, it receives from the external source, that is by the operator or the system under automation process, and it will give the output after performing certain operations to the display unit. So that is nothing but your input and output unit. So here the input is your keyboard, it could be the system data provided by the operator, and output is nothing but whatever we get as a display on the display unit. So the input and output interfaces provides an isolation and signal conditioning functions so that sensors and actuators can often be directly connected to them without the need of other circuit. Then the inputs might be from limit switches, which are activated when some event occurs, or the sensors such as temperature sensors, flow sensors, humidity sensors, etc. Then the outputs might be from the motor starter coils, solenoid valves, like we have seen control valves, then stepper motor, servo motor, etc. Electrical isolation from the external world is usually by means of opto isolators. It is also through the input output device that the programs are entered from a program panel. So here the input and output unit is used for a programming purpose and to get the result on display. Now every IO point has a unique address called as IP address, which is used by the CPU for giving or receiving the signal. The next part is the figure shows the basic of input and output device. So here the figure shows the basic form of input channel where the digital signal that is generally compatible with the microprocessor in the PLC is 5-volt DC supply. However, the signal conditioning done in the circuit, that is input channel with isolation, enables a wide range of input signals to be supplied. Now why this is to be done? The requirement is, for smaller circuits we can have a 5-volt DC supply, it is okay, but for larger operations where automation is necessary, you cannot work on the DC supply, so you need to deal with the AC supply, and for that AC supply to be used, you have to go for the isolation part and signal conditioning part, and the wide range can be achieved with this signal conditioning and isolation. So for larger PLC where the larger operations or number of operations carried out are more, we have the possible input voltages as 5 volt, 24 volt, 110 volt and 240 volt. And in general, for small PLCs where 300 to 1000 is the range of number of operations to be carried out, we can have the only one form of input where 24 volt is considered to be the moderate input range. Then the output to output unit will be digital. Outputs are specified as being of relay type, transistor type or triac type. With relay type output system, the signal from the PLC output is used internally to operate a relay and so is able to switch currents of the order of few amperes in external circuit. The relay isolates the PLC from the external circuit and can be used for both DC and AC switching. Relays are, however, relatively slow in operation. Then the transistor type of output uses a transistor to switch current through the external circuit. This gives a faster switching action. Optoisolators are used with the transistor switches to provide isolation between the external circuit, and the PLC, the transistor output is only for DC switching. So for AC supply we cannot use this transistor type output unit. And triac outputs can be used to control external loads which are connected to the AC power supply. Optoisolators are again used to provide isolation. So thus we can have outputs from the output channel might be of 24 volt 100 milliampere switching signal and a DC voltage of 110 volt and 1 ampere. Sometimes the range could be 240 volt 1 ampere or 240 volt 2 ampere AC supply from a triac output channel. With small PLC, all the outputs might be of one type, that is 240 volt and 1 ampere AC supply. With modular PLCs, however, the range of outputs can be accommodated by selecting different modules for supply to be used. Then along with this there is one more concept that is called as sourcing and syncing. Now what is mean by sourcing? Sourcing is nothing but depending on the input channel device or input channel method and output load direction, the concept of sourcing and syncing comes into the picture, where the sourcing and syncing are used to describe the way in which DC devices are connected to a PLC. With sourcing, the conventional current flow direction is from positive to negative, and input device receives current from the input module. If the current flows from the output module to output load, then the output module is referred as sourcing module. Whereas in syncing, exactly the opposite case is there, where the input device supplies current to the input module and the current flows to the output module from an output module. Then the output channel or output device is called as syncing output. Okay, so this is all about the IO devices. Then we need to check what are the input programs, and then we will go for this input output addresses. So let's start with the inputting programs. The programs are entered into the IO unit for small handheld programming device, where the desktop consoles can be considered as an input device and visual display unit is considered to be the output device. Then keyboard and a screen display we can take it as an example, or with the help of a personal computer where CPU is also there. Then for display unit monitor is there, and for input unit keyboard is there, can be taken as a example for input programming device, which is loaded with an appropriate software package. So definitely for programming you need some certain software. So only when the program has been designed on the programming device and is ready, it is transferred to the memory unit of PLC. Then the programs in the RAM can be changed by the user. Now we have seen that there are two types of memories. First one is RAM, which is a temporary memory, and ROM is permanent memory. So till the program is stored in the RAM, it can be changed by the user. However, to prevent the loss of program when the power supply is switched off, a battery backup is to be used in the PLC to maintain this temporary program files. Now why this is required? Because whenever the supply breaks, it will erase the temporary data in the RAM, because RAM has a tendency to erase or to wipe off the data stored in the temporary memory within fraction of seconds. So 5 to 10 seconds are even enough to erase or to wipe off the data or to clear the data in the random access memory. So after a program has been developed in a RAM, it may be loaded into ROM, and then once it is stored in the ROM, it gets permanent. So inputting programs required certain software. Then specifications for small PLCs often specify the program memory size in terms of number of program steps that can be stored. A program step is an instruction for some event to occur. What is mean by this? So it simply means whenever you run certain program, the next step, whenever you enter or whenever you ask the program to run that particular step, it will eventually give a command to next device to perform its operation. So program step is nothing but it is an instruction for some event to occur or to run particular machine. A program task might consist of number of steps. So typically the number of steps can be handled by a small PLC is in the order of 300 to 1000 number of operations, and that is generally adequate for most of the control situations. Now in certain companies where the complete automation is to be achieved, you cannot go for the small handling machines. You have to deal with the larger number of operations, and that can be achieved by the larger PLCs. So suppose we take the example of automotive industry, where complete automation is nowadays achieved through the PLCs only, but where the certain program to achieve for this automation are very large, and for that large PLCs are required. You cannot complete the complete process within 300 to 1000 number of operations. So there larger PLCs are used along with the robotics, and so of course certain programming which is beyond the microcontrollers you have to use for the computer systems also. So integration of microprocessor as well as computer programming is done, and then the PLCs are used. Then input and output processing. PLC is continuously running through its program and updating it as a result of input signals. So after certain iteration of process, PLC will store the results, that is output data, and it will again give the feedback to the input, and the input signal will get modified. So PLC is continuously running and modifying or updating its data. So each loop is termed as a cycle. There are two methods that can be used for input and output processing. That is, first one is continuous updating and second one is mass input output copying. So here continuous updating is required in terms of feedback system, where the feedback is very much important after each output, and if you want to repeat the operation after certain verification where the modification of the data is not required, you have to just replicate the output, then you can go for mass input and output copying. So this is simple input and output processing. Then input and output addresses. Now why this input and output address is required? Now in the first introduction slide itself we have seen that every input and output device has its own IP address, correct? So for PLC, the need of storing the data in terms of particular digits, you have to address that particular port, whether it is input port or output port, you need addressing of input and output ports. So that's why this input output addresses are important. So the PLC has to be able to identify each particular input and output. So for this identification, and after identification, whatever the input or output port is giving or taking the receiving the signal, that particular port is to be identified, and for that identification addresses are allocated. So this address allocation is nothing but your IO address. With small PLCs, the addresses are likely to be just a number preceded by a letter which indicates whether it is input or output. So I is used for a input and O is used for output. Then with larger PLCs having several racks. Now here what is mean by racks? Where you have to follow certain stages. So that particular stage, that is after performing stage 1, in stage 1 there are number of operations, you go for the stage 2. So that is nothing but change of rack in PLC. So having certain or several racks of input and output channels, number of modules are there in each rack, and the rack and modules are numbered, so the input and output can be identified by its rack number. And the addressing can be done as rack number followed by the number of module in that rack, and then a number will show its terminal number in the module. So first number, that is first there is a alphabet I or O. I is for input rack and O for output rack. After that there will be certain number which will show the number of rack, that is first, second or third, that is stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, etc. Then there will be a following number which will give you the module in that particular rack, and if there is any further classification, then the last digit will follow the terminal number in that particular module. So thank you. We'll see the ladder programming part in the next lecture.